He's working in the background on some of our streams. We decided today to up our game and stream to multiple channels at the same time at the request of several of you, because we want to present better. We want to get to more people, and we want to get to more people more valuable information. So what we'll try and do is try to make it as brief as possible, more information to more streams and more channels. And today we are on YouTube live, on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and more channels are yet to come. So enjoy it. Send us your questions. The beauty of it is that I can see your questions, Dennis can see your questions, and we can get it on immediately on the screen, and you can be with us at any moment of time. On this session of Block Chat, we'll be discussing first, where are we today at Blocksquare? What have we achieved over the past few weeks, knowing that we had a few weeks without a live session? It was premieres from recorded sessions, and we had a week off, which is not normal for us, but we had a week off. And it wasn't off work, it was just off block chat. At the same time, we'll after that talk about staking rewards, which I've started, and we will answer all your questions, and hopefully there are many. The test yesterday showed us that we had more come through than the usual. Dennis, how are you?
Really good, really good. Quite excited to do another live show after some time. And this new software we're using, we did a test yesterday, right?
Yep.
We did a live test, and the cool part was we got people already kind of commenting quite quickly, giving us feedback that they can actually hear us and that things are working. So hopefully there's not going to be any issues today.
Actually, if we find out today that we had more interaction yesterday in the 2-minute test rather than today, what we will do is we will make probably the block chat 2 hours later, because yesterday we were streaming at 12 o'clock my time, and now it's 8 o'clock my time. So probably the later it is, the better it is. Anyway, regards to everyone who was with us yesterday. Dennis, today we started 2 days ago with the first distributions on staking rewards. And where are we there? We had some questions on that, and some of the questions were, how will I find my tokens, the reward tokens? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I think it was quite exciting for the whole team to see rewards start going into the asset pool. As well, exciting for the owners of the real estate assets who tokenized, and we're waiting some of them even for months for us to roll the production version live. Yeah, it's just a couple of days, so it's the early beginning of this. There's improvements that we need to do on the UI, like for example, displaying the reward, the BST amount that is awarded to each owner of their tokenized real estate asset, and that's something that we are already on, and it's going to be, pushed to the D app in the next weeks, I would say, and at that point, I think people are going to be even more excited about that the staking of tokenized real estate.
So people are asking, where are my tokens, and how can I figure out how much tokens have I been awarded? So today they can see the percentage of the rewards that have gone to them out of the rewards pool, and their tokens are locked into the contract. So they're being released, but into the contract, isn't it?
Yes. So what's happening is tokens are being minted out of the BST contract based on the rules that we defined up front. So 250,000 BST will flow into the asset pool for the next few months, probably, until version 03 is released. that is. And this means that on a daily basis, we have something around 8,000 BST that goes into that asset pool. And right now, it should be quite easy for a real estate owner to estimate how much of that BST is going into their pocket, basically. And that's because we're just starting and there's no new assets being added. And so what they can say, it's okay, if there's 250K per month, if my share is, I don't know, 5%, that means that you're going to get 5% or 12,500, I would say, more or less. Obviously, this gets more complicated as we go along, right? We are tokenizing and onboarding assets. You're part of the asset onboarding calls as well, and the current board that is kind of vetting and looking into the documentation that real estate owners send to us. Sometimes that's a lengthy process because we require valuation to be brought to us. We require proof of ownership. So we're making really a big effort to do the best due diligence possible at our, with the resources that we have. Um, and um, and this means that right now it's, like I said, fairly easy. If you have 5% share or a 1% share in the pool, that's more or less the amount of BST that you're going to earn throughout the first month. Obviously, not all the assets we've tokenized have been locked in yet. I think we're at around of the value that we've tokenized so far. And there's a couple of real estate owners who are on vacation, returning from it, not familiar with MetaMask wallet, for instance. So there's certain things that we need to make sure we need to do so that they can safely approach. But I think, Makram, you're not the the crypto person here.
I'm the least
You're the
tech
real
savvy
estate
person in
expert,
the world.
right?
Exactly.
What was your experience? You staked an asset or two. What's your experience going through that process? I don't think it's.
No, it was very pleasant. And I would refer everyone here to Block Chat number 21. I believe, and I've heard very good feedback from friends who have tokenized assets, and they've gone through that, and they're, again, like me, the least tech savvy people in the world. We're not wired for that, yeah? So the max in tech that we are we adapt with is something similar to Excel, probably. And after block chat number 21, I believe they got along quite well. They understood the process, and we had very little mistakes. Probably we had one mistake, which I advise, again, no one to do. When you're getting your BSPT staked, make sure, please, that you include the whole 10,000, and make sure that the number, when you press infinite or when you press the 100%, goes to 10,000, not 1,000. So if you miss a zero, we can fix it. We've already fixed it for someone who've done that, but it will be it's not a straightforward way to do it for yourself. It's preferable that you don't do the mistake in the first place, isn't it?
Yeah, basically, it's um, the staking contract is designed so that one wallet can stake one um, property token uh, type. I mean, one wallet could stake multiple properties, obviously, but the lockup period is defined at 6 months. So until tokens are withdrawn, you can't add more BSBT to your lockup to your staked amount. So let's say you've staked 5,000 now and you want to do 5,000 tomorrow. You can't really do that. What we can do is we can have you register another wallet through the marketplace, and that gets associated to your account. And then what we can do is you can send your BSPT tokens to that other wallet and stake that from that wallet. So that's still something that can be done. but it's an extra step.
Preferable not to have it in the first place. Yeah, it's
Exactly.
so be
Exactly. So,
cautious. You have one property, two properties to stake. It just takes around 3 to 10 minutes. The whole process from launching the app to connecting your wallet to going through the whole process of getting the approval and taking it forward. So just give it the time and probably enjoy it. Any, thank you. We have you on screen now. Keep up the good work, guys. Thank you, and we would love more encouragement, definitely. Um, so why don't we talk about the number of assets that we have tokenized already to date?
we can I just want to add one thing, if I may, Makram, because some people might ask themselves, you know, why are you enabling to stake less than 100% of my tokens, right? If I get 10,000, I want to stake 10,000, right? Which makes total sense right now. But let's say in 1 or 2 months time, you have, um, let's say, in 1 or 2 month time, you have a sale of a token. So let's say that we enable our community to purchase tokens of a property owner from a property owner. So at that moment, I might say, well, I purchased 1,000 tokens, but so Makram is having apparently some issues technically, so you're stuck with me. Hopefully, he's able to join in soon. What I was saying is that um, what happens at that moment is you, as the owner of those tokens, might decide what you want to do with your amount. Maybe you want to say, okay, I'm going to stake 50% of it, while 50% I want to leave it liquid and not be locked in for 6 months. Why? Because maybe there's going to be a secondary market. Maybe I want to resell those tokens on the secondary market. So there's possibilities of how you can manage the real estate investment you're making through the purchase of tokens in the future. So that's why it's possible to stake less than just the full amount you have on your wallet. But it means that the property owners right now need to kind of take care of staking the full amount, and that's it, which is clicking on 100%, and the app does the rest. So I think Makram started another point in our discussion, and this is basically about the properties that we're tokenizing. As you can see from the numbers below the screen, so right here, we're now past the 40 million mark. We actually tokenize it, or not fully tokenized, but we have we are in a I'd say advanced due diligence process with a couple of property owners, and we were able to exceed that 40 million mark, and which brings our total count to 47 properties tokenized for the purpose of staking. This kind of shows that people are really interested in what we're doing. It's actually producing traction. And even though it might seem like a gamification of real estate tokenization, it's a fun thing to do. And it's a low risk engagement for a property owner, and people like it. We have inquiries to launch marketplaces. We say, hey, why don't we tokenize a property first? You guys can start staking it, and then we deal with the rest. We're going to launch a marketplace in due time. You might bring more assets with the value proposition of staking than you would with your marketplace right now. Because why? Because your marketplace won't have enough end users to offer liquidity, which is the promise of a marketplace operator to real estate owners. Now, does this put extra effort on us? Yes, because we're not really equipped to do properly due diligence on the assets we bring on board. Um, but what we're doing is we expanded our team so that we have enough expertise within our team to make those assessments as accurately as possible. Now, one might think, what if you onboard for the purpose of staking an asset where the owner is not really the owner, or the property has been sold in the meantime, or anything like that. And if we're not able to spot it in the time of tokenization, we are able to, let's say we're going to be able to spot it at the time of withdrawing from after 6 months. So unstaking those property tokens. And how we've designed that unstaking process, as we mentioned in the community in Discord, in a discussion that was recently there, the tokens are going, the BST is going then into a vesting contract. So the rewards are vested for 24 months, which is already a good protection against, diluting the market or bringing too much uh, supply of BST in circulation at the cutoff date. So that's one. And if the owner is not able to present the right documentation, the required documentation, they won't be able to withdraw a single BST token. And instead, what's going to happen is that BST token will remain locked until we lift a cliff, basically, in the vesting contract. And so we need to kind of approve the receivability of the rewarded BST. Hopefully, in that moment of time, in 6 months' time, we'll have not only version 0.3, but as well fully working Ocean Point product, at least in a kind of beta in a beta version, I would say, which means that property owners will have much to do with BSPT other than staking. But that's another discussion. So let me just check. Makram is still having some issues, I think. So I'll go here on our Twitter account and just try to see, some of the questions we have around. Let me start with the last one. Explain in simple terms, why should I tokenize my real estate? What benefits do I have? What's the process of onboarding if I want to tokenize my real estate asset? That's a great question. And I think the benefit ultimately is you tokenize your real estate asset so that you have flexibility, and you can basically leverage the value of the real estate asset you have to extract liquidity. What does this mean? It means that if I own an apartment worth $500,000, I maybe want to have 30K tomorrow, and Ocean Point is being designed to enable you that. So why do you want to tokenize today? Is because the potential of Ocean Point is going to bring to your asset and what you will be able to do with it. Now, another reason for tokenizing real estate is refinancing a real estate investment you make. So, for instance, I invested in a student housing property, refurbished it, leased it out to 30 tenants. I have a $500,000 loan on it, put some equity in. But as the loan is getting repaid, my equity is actually increasing, right? So my debt level is being decreased. Plus, let's say the asset appreciated in value, so my loan to value ratio changes as well. And I might end up in, I don't know, 3 years' time, owning half of that property's equity on the books. Now, by tokenizing, I can extract or I can refinance the debt part, or I can kind of liquidate my equity part. So that's a couple of reasons why you would tokenize. Now, a very interesting case from a real estate developer perspective, why they would tokenize real estate. So we had a case in Belgium. There was a big real estate developer there. I don't know if I mentioned it before. So they have like 15 or 20 building sites at any given moment. They have a big patch of land that they receive from the municipality to develop. Now, they're able to sell apartments quite easily. To do that, they obviously spend marketing budget. And as it turned out, they spent 20% of their marketing budget to sell 80% of the supply of a certain unit, of a certain project. Let's say it's a 100 unit project. So they sell 80 apartments in the first couple of months. But then they spend 80% of their marketing budget to sell the remaining 20% of units. Now, with tokenization, the idea was to bundle right up front those 20% of the units and upsell to buyers of the property. So basically saying, hey, you're buying this unit for you're buying this unit for 500,000. What if you pay in 550K, and you're going to get a percentage in those 20 properties that we bundle under the token, and those properties are going to be leased out. Now, the developer, what they're doing is they're capitalizing the 20%, which is usually their margin, right away. They're upselling to existing customers, and they're cutting down on marketing costs. So that's another way of using tokenization. And maybe another interesting model that Makram and I see Makram is just joining us back again. So thankfully you were able to join.
Yes, I have.
And you got me scared there. I can't really do this for the full show, I think. So um, I'm talking right now. I'm not sure if you followed in, but there was a question of why would a property owner tokenize, right? So we started with the a single owner to then a developer, and now we are in the waters where we had many discussions in the past 2 weeks, um, especially, but even before, how that applies to residential real estate and so-called, um, lease to own model, basically. And this is something also very interesting that's happening around, or it's bound to happen, basically. I lease my property, to a tenant. The tenant wants to buy into the equity of that property because they're living there, and they want to actually gradually own a part of that apartment, for instance, or that house. And how can tokenization kind of automate and streamline that process? It's quite astonishing. So basically,
So
yeah.
there is a very important thing here when we talk about tokenization, and the question comes so often, why do we tokenize property? I always like to start a step before that. You tell me, why would you think about tokenizing property? Look, if something is working perfectly and you have no caveats in how it's working, and there's no way to improve it, although there's nothing where that stands at the point where there's no way to improve it, you don't definitely need to change it. When we look at property as an asset class, you have pros and cons. Some of the pros are that it's an asset class that has a good hedge in inflation, it cash flows. It's an asset class that is generally easy to understand, easy to manage, easy to run. And I say generally because there's caveats to all of those statements. However, it's bulky, it's non-liquid, it's in general runs in an imperfect pattern, imperfect market. In general, it's also not as transparent as other asset classes. Can we, with tokenization or any other solution, improve those cons to make them pros? I believe we can. And here is where tokenization comes into play. It comes into play to solve things or to improve something that's already working so that it can work beautifully and at a much better level and a much better rate. So today you can have an asset class that is more liquid. You can be a tenant and own. You can be a tenant who owns his property as he goes. And if you are interested, by the way, get in touch with us. If you're interested to own a property that you live in today, that you're a tenant of, get in touch with us. We want every landlord of yours to be able to sell a portion to you. I'll give you a simulation of something. Let's say you're a landlord who's 55 and you're simply nearing retirement. You have property, but you decided to retire. You're cash flowing, yet your property is mortgaged to the bank. So most of the cash flow that comes from rental goes to pay the mortgage. How about if you can cash flow at a better level? How about if the tenant can purchase part of the property as he goes? So he lives in it and he owns part of it. Over the coming 20 years, which is probably your mortgage period, you're cash flowing much more handsomely. You're benefiting more from that property, and the other tenant is living in a property that he feels part of, that he feels he needs to take care of in a better way. Isn't it better? Does that make sense? Does that make you want to tokenize? What do you think, Dennis? Does it?
Yeah, I mean, we've been back and forth about the discussion of tokenizing residential real estate, and not for the purpose of crowdfunding or getting liquidity from the crowd, so the ICOing of real estate, but instead just having this relationship between owner and tenant becoming intertwined, and the flexibility that comes with it, right? So that it's not a fixed contractual agreement with fixed amounts that the tenant need to pay every month to acquire a portion of property, but that it also serves the tenant and the geek kind of economy, and the uncertainty of your job situation, basically, as a tenant who cannot afford to purchase a home outright on their own. um, and it serves both sides. So it's an ideal situation that you put there in a very kind of simple way. There's most property owners are near to retirement. They have property. They maybe want to liquidate it, but at the same time, then they feel like they're losing on the cash flows that those properties are producing, right? So the cash flows are great, but at the same time, the equity has appreciated over time when they purchase the property. So it makes a lot of sense to start kind of softly exiting that position of equity in favor of bringing their cash flows up, by enabling the tenant to purchase a stake in the property. And I think this is kind of a very, very interesting model.
Another point that is made here by How to Crypto. How are you guys? And continue joining us. You're joining us on the screen today. Liquidity is drying up in real estate market, in the real estate market. This is Blocksquare's times to shine. Time to shine, definitely. Let's go. Let's go together. I believe that again, we really aspire to making every tenant a landlord, and we want to make every tenant a landlord, and we believe that's possible in a healthy way without overstretching their financial capabilities and without taking commitments that they can't handle or that puts pressure on their families and their lives. And and this is one of the reasons people need to tokenize. You've mentioned something, however, Dennis, while I was coming back in because Restream kicked me out, obviously for valid reasons in their eyes. So when I was coming back in, you were talking about bundling properties that could be. We were talking to someone a few days ago, and Dennis and I were on the call, and the guys have social housing. And it reminded me of a presentation we've done probably a year ago now in Expo 2020 in the Slovenian pavilion. I had the pleasure and the honor to represent Blocksquare in the Slovenian pavilion. I'm the Slovenian face for the company at that point of time, and we talked about the and Victor was present, by the way. Victor was one of our co-founders, and at the same time we were talking about the impact of tokenization on the sustainability and community development. And what we were talking about at that time is the sustainable global development goals by the UN. And after that, we had another presentation at Blockcheck, and we were talking about the same subject with a different format. We believe that there is a big possibility of the collaborative purchase, the collaborative development that can be impacted quite well by tokenization for communities who want to develop social housing. Remember, systems have tighter liquidity today. It's tougher for governments to support communities, especially sometimes rural communities. And if the community comes together to build a bridge, to build a school, or to build a neighborhood, or to improve a neighborhood, that works big time. And I've seen something, an article a few days ago, about parties who are buying uh, houses in their neighborhood collaboratively just to avoid a big developer coming scrapping a house, a small house, and building an ugly big house in their expression in that article. And what the neighbors are doing is they're doing it the conventional way. Imagine that they can do it through tokenization. They can buy this house, and each of them contributes to the purchase of that house in their neighborhood so that the neighborhood stays intact the way they like it and the way they maintained memories since they were kids. That's again another way of benefiting from tokenization. Do you see that, Dennis?
Yeah, there was a block chat session some time ago where the topic of basically sustaining communities um around for community benefiting the investment into I don't know, a community project basically. Like there might be a playground somewhere between a densely developed housing area, and investors would need to capitalize on making investments or investing in renewing that playground or park doesn't make sense. So, but maybe they get the permit to build additional housing, and it would just flood the the amount of people living in the area,
Let
and
me
it
ask you a
would
very fast
take
question
away.
here.
So in that case, the already the people who already live in the area could kind of collectively purchase that area and make it feasible for the municipality to leave it as is, for instance. And you have
Let
those
me ask
cases,
you a
like you
question.
mentioned, that are
Hmm.
being done traditionally already.
Let
So
me
it's
ask you a
not.
question here.
Yeah.
The question is, let's say today, hypothetically speaking, someone owns a student's housing in some place in the world, and he currently is leasing that student housing and making consistent returns of it. Can you give me a route forward? What would he do today if he wants to earn more? And again, we all want to earn more of our investment, and we all want to benefit of our investment today rather than only in the future. And yes, real estate is a long-term game, but there is a benefit that we can add today. So can you tell me what would he do today for him to gain more, either cash flow or returns of his investment?
Um, well, you probably, if you
After
have that.
contacting us.
Sorry.
After contacting us.
They can start by contacting us. Yeah, indeed, I think so. Um, there's a couple of things. It depends on the situation of the owner. But from my perspective, I think um, you want to find maybe a new property you want to redevelop into the same type of offering in the same town, because you have that expertise under your belt. You've done it already, and you just want to continue building that portfolio. And that portfolio is going to distribute risk. It's going to increase your potential earnings. It's going to increase your market share of accommodation you offer. And so tokenization, I think, might be a very interesting model, especially because um, it might attract a younger generation who sees that as a great investment, but they're definitely not able to invest in. But they might invest a couple thousand into that kind of projects alongside you as the professional in the game.
So if you are an owner of that student housing, and let's say you're earning an ROE of 8-9% today, and that's an ROE of 8 and 9%, so it doesn't have to be cash flowing to you of 8 to 9% of your investment, and you wanna simply earn more because you have more expenses and inflation is on the rise, and you wanna simply earn more so that you can have your ends meet in your household without working more than you used to work before. One of the main ways to do so is to tokenize, where the equity in your property can serve you as you go as a cash flowing investment. So you're liquidating the property as you go. By the way, prior to doing that, if you're today not sure of the idea of liquidation through tokenization and selling the property in tokens, why don't you just tokenize and stake? And here there's a misperception, Dennis. I've heard a question yesterday in one of my meetings that says, um, if I tokenize a building, who owns that building after I do tokenize it? And the answer is simply you. So if you are tokenizing a property, the party who owns the property after tokenization is you until you stake, and then you still own the property, yet your tokens are into a vesting period or a staking contract, and they are giving you rewards, or until you sell those tokens to a third party. The third party can be, in our case, Ocean Point or any other individual. And when you sell it to any other individual, that portion of the property is owned by that party. Yet, if you just tokenized, you just created a digital representation of your property. You still own the tokens, it means you still own the property. You've lost nothing of it. What can you tell us, Dennis, about the fears that people have while tokenizing? They have many fears that relate more to crypto than owning tokens. And when they come from a real estate background, they are not really aware of all what tokenization encompasses.
I mean, I managed to talk a lot with property owners in the past months um, about the subject of, what ownership actually is, and I think the first part that needs to be settled in that discussion is for them. Some don't understand the difference between ownership and debt. So it's already, the equity versus debt part is the first discussion. It doesn't have anything to do with tokenization. But let's suppose that there's this understanding of this difference. Um, they generally understand the concept of tokenization as being the transfer of certain rights, and that those rights are then defined by a legal document, and that there's these tokens that represent how much of those rights are being transferred. So this is, I think, quite easily understandable. And then the for the purpose of staking, they the conversation goes, okay, so the tokens go to my own wallet. So basically, I'm not transferring those rights to anybody else. I'm retaining them. So that's fine. And then there's a bit of perplexity of what happens when they lock it into um, Ocean Point, right? For the purpose of staking, they feel like they're parting away with those rights, but the reality is they're not, because they're the only ones that can acquire those rights back. And basically they're just locking up tokens into a locker, into a safe lock, and they're the only ones that have the key to unlock it from it. So they're not parting away from that the ownership of those rights. They're just locking them for a defined period of time. Um,
We have a few
and once they
questions here.
understand this part, they feel safe going forward.
Do you want us to answer a few questions?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
I believe
Sure.
one of the questions we've answered before, but let's answer it again. What happens if somebody stakes today and sells the property within the period? So we're talking about the coming 6 months, probably. What happens?
Um, if they stake today and they,
Sell the property.
oh, yeah, I talked about this before. But we have this process of doing due diligence before we tokenize a property, and
I
then
talked to it. You talked about it probably when I was kicked out. Sorry for
exactly,
that.
yeah, exactly. So, and then after the 6 months period of time, the owner is able to unstake. It's not mandatory. They can leave it as is, or they can decide to unstake. And if they decide, when they decide to unstake, that's the moment the rewards that they receive starts vesting in the vesting contract. But before they can actually withdraw any, they need to provide additional documentation to prove that they still own the property, that there's no, you know, there hasn't been any change basically in the ownership of the property in the time between start and end of staking.
By the way, guys, feel free to going. We'll have you on screen immediately. One question that came a few days ago, and we weren't able to answer it in the previous session because we didn't do a previous session. Whenever the company is staking or is creating tokenization contracts today or tokens, you are seeing a they see on Etherscan probably a contract created. However, those contracts do not necessarily represent something that they see on the marketplace. Why? Uh, and the answer probably I would leave it for you to answer, Dennis, while I look at our Twitter questions. But I believe the answer is simple, and we've answered it before as well. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm sorry, but I was not. I was looking at the Twitter questions actually right now.
No problem. You
So
can answer one of those, and then we'll come back to this question. It's
yeah,
just, the question that came a few days ago, we didn't answer it before. Um, People are seeing tokenization contracts or activity that's happening online, but they don't see that represented in the marketplace yet. And when we chatted about it, it's because we create contracts or we create tokenization events when the gas fees are low, and when we are able to do that at a lower cost rather than at a higher cost, and then we
oh, yeah.
keep those, yeah, we keep those until the right time comes. Yeah.
Basically, it's like we're pre-minting tokenization token contracts, and we can use them at any point in time. So basically, we're stockpiling on empty prop token contracts that can then be purposed for a specific tokenization.
We
Um,
have a question here, Dennis. We are now getting used to assets, and this is from BRE Tech on Twitter. We are now getting used to assets being tokenized on a regular basis. When do you see us hitting 50 to 100 million market cap? Very soon. We probably,
I don't know.
with the
We're
hiding,
right
probably
now
now.
we're at what 42 million worth of real estate. Like I went through it at the beginning when you were logged out. It's 47 properties, um, and I think if we start going into a market like the US, I think this then becomes really interesting because it's a huge market. Right?
Or when properties
Yeah,
that similar to the ones that we've tokenized already and bigger come along, where we tokenize the hotel, we tokenize the commercial building. When those
yeah,
start coming along, I believe 50 and 100 million is something that will jump beyond. Will not be stuck on or waiting for. Yeah.
yeah.
There's another question here. There's
That's
currently around $1.9 million worth of property tokens staked. If we
okay.
count 10,000 BSPT for each property. That's 10%, i.e., 10% of the value. This is just half of all the value locked in for staking. Why so? Are property owners experiencing issues, challenges in the process? They're on
Um,
vacation.
you can probably answer
Yeah,
the
I would be
question.
able to answer it definitely. Look, so plenty of our what we've done, as Dennis mentioned while I was away, I'm sure. What we've done is we tried to delay the reward distribution until we had enough of owners on board, but we had to put a deadline for that, which was 22nd, Dennis, isn't it? It
Exactly.
was 22nd. Now, some property owners are slower to get back to us because they are on vacations. Some others are um, grasping the matter slowly. Some have very busy schedules, whom we know personally, and will be doing it as time passes by. I expect that over the coming 2 to 3 weeks, beginning of September, everyone who have tokenized would have staked. Do you expect the same, Dennis? Because I believe people will go back to school, thus come back from vacations and go back to normal life.
Yeah, I think that with September, usually people start, getting back to speed with their regular activities. We must understand that property owners are not necessarily professionally engaged in that part of their life. They might be, you know, um, professionals in other fields. They might be doctors. They might be, you know, working in a corporation, and this is a side thing that they do to be able to kind of preserve and grow their wealth. So
Another
obviously,
question?
this there was this August period, vacations. People get back to work. They need to you know. Do things that they missed while they were gone, and then when the schedule clears, they're gonna probably be able to put some thought on this.
So
I'm sure.
September, probably beginning to mid of September, I believe we expect everyone to have done that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the incentive for anybody that hasn't done it so far is that rewards have already started going in. So those who were aware of this already uh, staked their property tokens, and those who are still waiting, this might be an incentive for them to push a bit faster.
We have another question on Twitter, which says, with different countries having companies who tokenize, is there a certain strategy Blocksquare is following, like aiming on more countries or more properties in the country, in the current countries? It's both.
Both, yeah. So we mentioned due diligence process a couple of times today, and obviously, I can do the due diligence more or less with the help of the people I know here in Slovenia to check certain stuff on the legal side. Plus, it's a very open market with a lot of data being provided openly about real estate properties. So it's quite safe to assess a problem, quite easy to access that data. Makram, for instance, is able to service the market in UAE and provide that expertise. We have Daniel, who's able to do that in the UK, where we haven't started actually tokenizing real estate for the purpose of staking yet, but we do have the ability of doing due diligence there. We have Julia in Australia with her connections helping out. If there's anything that would happen in the Netherlands, we have Joe Bronkers who could definitely help there. We have Hani Delski who can help in on the German market. We have Walter Stramens who is definitely able to help something comes up in the Swiss market and Austria. And so what I'm saying is we have people that are close to us who can definitely help us or refer us to a company that can help us out should things pick up there. But the best way of doing this is through certified partners, and that's kind of the primary way of onboarding assets for the whole Blocksquare ecosystem. So I'm really glad about the partnership with Brick Trade that we've done for not just the UK, but probably for assets in Europe as well. And we're really bullish on their ability to grow a great marketplace. We already kicked off work on it, and I believe that with the beginning of September, we'll start strategizing with them and following, assisting their team to launch as efficiently and as well as possible, for instance.
I was asked a question yesterday, Dennis, or the day before, actually. The question was, one of the parties, I'll not mention.
Hopefully, he's not being disconnected. But yeah, I think we lost Makram for a second there. Let's see if he's able to reconnect. Um, Now, maybe I can jump on the next question here. So I believe the question is relating to from Crypto Woody on Twitter. We have for people who tokenize already. What is their feedback? Do current customers find the onboarding process simple enough? Um, I think so. I mean, we mentioned this a couple of times, and what we see is that the process of providing the required information on the property is actually the hardest part for those who are looking to tokenize real estate. The process of receiving tokens and then locking them into Ocean Point, it's way easier than, let's say, getting a proper property valuation report by an appraiser in a normal period of time, or receiving a statement from their bank. And this obviously differs from market to market. In some markets, it's really easy to access, and in some markets, it's just hard. So I think the feedback is mixed so far. But in terms of how you receive tokens and then stake, I think it's very positive. While we do need to keep our standards high so that we ensure that we onboard properties and we have proper valuations for those properties, and information on the ownership is accurate. Now, here we have a question by Arthur, who is asking, how is your project light and differ from Propi? Um, that's a good question. I think it differs quite a lot. I know Propi since their ICO, basically. Um, and I've been following what Propi is doing, I would say, consistently throughout the years. And they're doing something that's very, very interesting, which is, I think, tokenizing with NFTs title. That's at least where they are right now. I don't know how much traction they actually have, but it's great that they're still up and running. And I think this is exactly what the market needs. It needs more projects like Propi and Blocksquare to lead the way. And for instance, Solid Block with the IL, that just keep on pushing, because cracking the real estate market with tokenization, whether that's NFTs or ERC20 tokens, it's not an easy thing to do, and just need to push. Um, Now, the differences between those, between Propi and Blocksquare, I think mainly is, Propi is digitizing title in a way, how it's present right now. So they're basically want to facilitate the transfer of title via blockchain. Um, and Blocksquare doesn't want to facilitate transfer of title via blockchain, but we are focusing on economic rights that derive from asset ownership. So this is clearly two different things in the real estate world. Um, when I transfer title, I'm basically selling my property from me to you. And why I would want to do this is because I want to sell it, right? There's markets where this is feasibly possible with blockchain, and there's markets where it's totally unfeasible. So, for instance, the European market for property would be a no-go. Um, but in the US, where the legal system is a bit different, I think that property can, can have good traction. Blocksquare, on the other hand, is much more fintech type of product where we are focusing on bringing real estate value on chain, not the title itself. And for that value to be then used in different ways. Like we mentioned today, we can use the same tokenization protocol to raise funds, refinance real estate, um, um, offer developers a way to cut costs, um, offer tenants a way to engage with their landlords to purchase portions of the equity um, through a longer period of time. Um, we are able to move real estate tokens to Ocean Point into DeFi and serve the DeFi market and the various ecosystems by providing real estate value on chain, that could facilitate lending protocols, that could facilitate token ecosystems, um, etc. So there's a lot of things that can be done once you transfer real estate value on chain. Now, Makram is still having issues on connecting here. So if I don't believe we have any more questions here. I'm going to refresh Twitter to see if we have any more. Um, and if not, what I would like to do is finish today's block chat by talking about the upcoming events where either me or Makram or somebody from the team is going to be present. So we have two events that are coming up in the next 2 months. They're both real estate related more than they're crypto related. One of those, the first one is GRI Club in Paris, 13th and 14th of September. I'm going to be there for a short while. If anybody's in Paris, please ping me, reach out to me via any social media account I have, or preferably even Discord. And then the second event, it's Expo Real in Munich. For those not familiar with Expo Real, is the largest trade show for the real estate market in Central Europe. And all the big players are present there. You have pavilions of different countries presenting, and Blocksquare has been chosen to present under the Slovenian pavilion alongside other 6 startups from Slovenia in the built world environment. so prop tech, let's say. And we're quite proud of this application that it got through, and excited because I'm actually for the first time meeting Makram face to face. He's flying from Dubai to Slovenia, and then we're heading to Munich afterwards. He's gonna stay with the team for a week or so. So 3 days of fair show and 3 days after, and it's gonna be fun to have him here. And I'll plan to do with Makram a block chat session, maybe even from Munich. We'll see how the connection is there, but why not? Why not do a special edition Explorial, uh, right? So yeah, so that's it from our end. Thank you for tuning in, and keep on following Blocksquare. Thank you. Cheers.